Welcome, everybody. I'm Samantha Amit, and I'm really pleased you're joining me. Today, I want to speak about a pattern I see in very capable leaders. The more trusted they are, the more dependable they are, the more everything starts to land with them. So, this session is called From Pressure to Presence, and it's for leaders who carry too much. Because the issue is often not commitment. The issue is when commitment becomes carrying everything personally. I'm going to be using an anonymized coaching story, and later I'll connect it to the Mindful Act leadership model. As you may know, I'm a mindfulness practitioner. I'm a leadership coach. I coach leaders in over 40 countries today. And so Stephanie is one of these leaders, and we're going to be understanding how she moved from being pressurized to presence. So how do you know if you're in the right place? This session is for you if you're ambitious, if you're capable, if you find sometimes that things just land on your desk too often, or maybe you choose that. So you lead people, maybe cross-functionally, maybe leading customers. Some people don't like to use the term lead and they call it manage. So you manage people. You interact maybe with customers, with projects, different teams. Maybe yourself, like Stephanie, has got 3 teams, and you feel the pressure. I'm assuming that everybody here feels pressure because, yes, it's normal. Pressure is in the world, it's in the universe, and how do we want to live in that pressure? So if you find that you step in quickly when there is uncertainty, if you really care about your work, about the customer, about the people around you, and sometimes because you care, you end up carrying more than is actually yours to carry. So just take a breath as you're listening to me, breathing in and breathing out. I'm going to bringing in mindfulness all the time. And so I do want to tell you today is not about learning to care less. It's about finding more choice in how you respond in the moment. So welcome. If you don't know me, my name is Samantha Amit. And I've been coaching leaders in 40 different countries for 20 years now. And I see this all the time. I see this pressure all the time as a pattern. So as you're listening in to this live session, I'm going to invite you just to breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. If you're sitting, notice your feet on the ground. And I'm going to be curious what you're taking away from today's session. Because today the idea is to give you tools to understand the Mindful Act leadership model that I've written about in my book, Mindfulness at Work. And that you can take tools to work with your team, to work within your company, even at home, because moving from pressure to presence, it's not just about a one-off thing. It's about how you carry yourself at work and in life. So let's meet Stephanie. Stephanie she's a real hero. She's amazing. And a few months ago, when I met her, she was a senior customer success leader in a global tech company. When we first met, she'd actually stepped into a much bigger role. Her world had become more complex overnight. She was no longer leading one team. She actually received 2 teams, and 90 days into the coaching, she already received a 3rd team. And so she decided to continue coaching with me because she just kept scaling. And so she was working cross functions, across countries, across competing priorities, and across a matrix organization where lines of responsibility were not always clear because they were restructuring. So within the senior stakeholders, nobody knew what was going on. And so she needed to make tough decisions. She had dotted line relationships, constant change, new expectations, AI transformation, and every day seemed to be bringing another problem. So this is Stephanie. Maybe some of it relates to you if you've got complexity, if you keep getting more and more stakeholders, if you find there's ambiguity in your role. And this is important, you see. Stephanie was not struggling because she was weak. She was struggling because the qualities that make her successful were now being overused. So let's see how capability can actually become a trap. So on paper, she was doing really well. She was smart, very capable, dependable. If a project drifted, she was called in because she always pulled it back on course. If there was confusion, she created clarity. If somebody was stuck, she was the go-to person. She was highly experienced, dependable, trusted. And she was expected to solve everything. But not only, this is actually what's very interesting, not only was she expected to solve it, she expected herself to solve it. So I want to ask you, is your pressure coming really from outside? And it is. But how much of it is coming from inside that you are creating it because of how you're processing the pressure on the outside? And so this, my friends, is what we want to talk about today, how Stephanie moved from being always on, from being pressurized, to actually understanding what she was struggling with and taking ownership over, the pressure and deciding that she's not carrying it all herself. And so what actually happened was, it was very interesting because she noticed something else about herself. She noticed that she was restless a lot of the time, not only while she was working. And how you'll know that, if you find you busy, and that it's hard for you to rest. Society today also doesn't honor rest, and we do need to rest and restore. We take a lot of pressure in our bodies. Some of us suffer from anxiety, from fear, from overwhelm when there's a lot going on. And when you are so dependable and so ambitious, you're always thinking, I have to do this, I should do this, or he has to do that. And so you're creating a lot of pressure within yourself. Why are you creating it? Because whenever you think, I have to, or he has to, and it may be true, but just those words alone put a lot of pressure on yourself. And by the way, I wrote an article about that. I wrote a newsletter around it. So if you're interested, just ping me and I'll send you a link to that newsletter. The 4 different types of pressure that you create for yourself just by thinking, these thinking traps. So getting back to Stephanie, she was restless 24/7. At home, on holiday, in the evenings. What was interesting is, her thoughts just took over. And she just felt like she had no choice, that everything was happening to her. And that I said to her, what do you think about the fact that you do have a choice? And this was foreign to her, this coaching question of what if you have a choice? Because what had happened is she went on holiday for one day. It was a banking holiday. She went on holiday and she found she couldn't relax. She was thinking about work. She was thinking about what she had to do. And, so much pressure all the time. So how busy are you? How much are you in execution? Because if you want to move from being in execution to being a strategic leader, you need to take time. You need to develop your team. You need to develop their capacity. And you can't always be on. You can't be carrying everything yourself. And so Stephanie was carrying so much. And the truth is, she did get a promotion. But if she wasn't coaching with me, she would definitely be actually going through burnout, because it was just too much. She was carrying too much. She was taking too much of a burden. It wasn't even that the system was putting pressure on her. She was putting pressure on herself. So she didn't think that there was another way. And I said to her, what if you do have a choice, Stephanie? And she didn't even understand that. So she laughed. She thought it was funny and she thought it was absurd. Of course, she didn't have a choice. Look at the role, look at the responsibility, look at the number of people depending on her, look at the organization. So many people were actually being let go because of the AI transformation that she was partly responsible for. And so she had to look after her team. She had to look after herself, her teams actually. But in the following weeks, what it did was that question actually caused her to become more curious and caused her to think, actually, what if she was carrying more than the role itself? And that's where she started to think that could she be a good leader without actually holding everything herself? So I want to actually pause a moment and let's just see, we've been 11 minutes in, and I'm actually going to invite you to just notice how you're feeling right now. What emotions are present? So I'm bringing mindfulness in. What is mindfulness? Mindfulness is present moment awareness, non-judgmentally. What is that non-judgmental piece? The non-judgmental piece doesn't mean that you're not going to judge. We all judge. Our brains are wired to judge. Our brains are wired to keep us safe. That's why we feel so pressurized the whole time. By the way, I'm just going to pause and tell you this is the second live that I'm doing from pressure to presence. And it's important because the first live, I spoke a lot about how the brain works. Today, I'm not going to go into that. So if you want the link, you can find it on LinkedIn, also on my YouTube channel, Samantha Amit, and you can ping me and ask me and I'll send you the link. So from pressure to presence is a lot to do about how your brain works. But what I want to do today is I actually want to practice some mindfulness with you. So I want you to notice that the definition of mindfulness is being present from moment to moment. So how can we do that? We have to practice it. It doesn't happen naturally. We all are on automatic pilot. Most of the time we are reacting like Stephanie. We creatures of habit. So we go from one thing to the next. So let's take a moment to practice mindfulness. Now, if you are driving for some reason and listening to me, all I'm going to ask you to do is pay attention to whatever's around you, listen to my voice, and follow your breath. Okay? So I'm going to ask you, and I do this practice a lot with the leaders I coach, because part of it is actually grounding them before we do other work. So I'm going to invite you, if you can, to actually leave everything you're doing. If you can, and if you agree. One of the things we need to do is we need to agree to let go. Okay, it's not easy. We are holding so much. So I'm going to ask you if you agree just for 2 minutes to practice with me to let go of everything if you can, and to find a place to be still and just to sit down, feeling your feet on the ground. And I am going to invite you to close your eyes. So yay, you did it. You closed your eyes, maybe. And I'm just going to ask you to say your name, welcome in your name. So I'll say welcome and Sam. And let's start off by taking 3 breaths. So we're going to breathe into the count of 4. And we're going to breathe out for the count of 6. And again, breathing in and breathing out. So I would like you to invite you so that the in-breath is shorter than the out-breath. If you can remember that, to do that and practice that, that's going to help calm your system, calm you internally, that you can be more present. So let's again breathe in life and breathe out any tension. Yay, you just took 1 minute to practice mindfulness. And I'm going to do another practice with you further down in this live. But now what I'd like to do is move on. And I just want to remind you that, Stephanie, she had this bank holiday. And it was one day that she was away. And she noticed during that day that she was away that she was thinking about meetings. She noticed when she was away that she was solving problems. She noticed that she was physically away from work, but she was actually working. So psychologically, she'd never really left. And don't worry. Don't worry if you're noticing. That's the first thing. That's actually being present to your thinking. And remember, I told you that the mindfulness definition is moment by moment present non-judgmentally. So before we can move to being present, we first have to often notice that interim stage that we're not present and notice what's going on within us, what's going on in our minds, what's going on in our bodies, what's going on in our heart. And so she noticed that. She noticed that she was tense. She noticed that she was overwhelmed for things that were going to be happening in the next day when she got back to work. She had a very important presentation. She was thinking about all the things that had been going on. And so just noticing that non-judgmentally, what I do with the leaders that are coaching with me, I teach them to bring in this third person perspective. Eckhart Tolle calls it the observer. In mindfulness, when we practice mindfulness, we practice, observing our thinking, because through observing our thinking, we actually gain awareness. Anybody here that's joining me that is practicing Vipassana actually means insight. It's a kind of insight meditation where you sit and you do nothing. Because when you sit and you do nothing, you notice your thoughts. That's why a lot of people find coaching helpful. Because when you come into the coaching room with me, you have a moment to process your thoughts. And so let's go back to just talking about the definition of mindfulness and non-judgment. If you want to move from being pressurized to being more present, it's being more. Being more is also with what is. Another really great resource is Byron Katie, Loving What Is, because what we need to do is we need to actually be able to accept our reality in order to be more comfortable with it. And I can tell you that for me, I feel like my life over the last few years, I'm originally from South Africa, but living in Israel for the last 30 years has been very, very pressurized. And so there's been a lot of pressure on the outside. And so how do I navigate that pressure? You navigate that pressure by noticing reality. You can't escape reality. So my friends, if you are in an organization where there's a lot of turnover because of AI, there may be turnover because there's some disruption in your organization. You may be a founder. I coach a lot of founders. You may be a founder where you're building and scaling and things are growing fast and you have to learn to say no to things. You have to learn where to focus. All of this creates pressure and that's normal. How do you want to stand within that pressure? How do you want to be within that pressure? So what I want to do is I want to move on and I want to take you into, Stephanie's life a little bit, because we are talking about Stephanie, who's a real, she's a real client. So we've spoken about the bank holiday. Now I want to go into her automatic pattern. And why this is important, because we are creatures of habit. We're always on automatic pilot. More than 50% of the time, we're on automatic pilot. And that's okay. But what we want to do is we want to actually, part of the time, be able to come into present moment awareness and not do what we did before, because our automatic response is not always going to serve us. It's not always going to help us. So she continued, with this pattern of uncertainty making her pressurized, she was involved. For those of you that can see the picture on the screen, she's very involved with her team. She's very hands-on with her team. She asked them lots of questions. She was checking in with them. She joined meeting after meeting. She loved solving problems. If any of you are subject matter experts, it's the hardest thing not to solve problems, because that's what you're really good at. That's why you kept getting promoted. That's why you are the expert. And so it's the hardest thing to learn to let go. It's the hardest thing to let go, be present, maybe let go and give things to your team. And so her intention of being always on, caring so much, was a good intention. She cared deeply. She wanted her people to succeed. And so she wanted, to protect the customer. She wanted the work to be done, but there was an unintended consequence. The more she stepped in, the less room other people had to step up. And so what we did is we started talking about the different parts of her. And she noticed, this was actually revolutionary for her, because she noticed that she actually has these different parts. She has a caring part, she has a responsible part, she has a fixing part. And she started naming it. My fixing part is coming in. And so notice it's a part of her. It's not who she is. She's not the fixer. She's not the solver. But she can be that. And so what we need to do is we need to learn to bring other parts forward, the parts that know how to wait and sometimes be patient. So she could notice this part of her walking in this room, this part of her that wanted to help, this part of her that wanted to reduce uncertainty, wanted to control things. We all have this need to control, because, as I said, our brain wants to keep us safe all the time. And so our brain is ever on the lookout. Am I safe? Am I safe? And so this fixing part wanted to make sure that everything was okay. This fixing part believed that leadership meant solving. But this is where awareness really mattered, because Stephanie started building this awareness muscle. I'm going to tell you in a few minutes how she did that, And so what she did is she started to pause. Just a moment to pause, like we did for a minute, to notice our thinking. And inside that pause, she noticed that she had a choice. And so I'm going to even ask you now to pause. Just close your eyes and just breathe. Just say hello. Don't be scared to just pause for a moment. Nothing's going to happen. The world is not going to crash if you stop for that moment, So, if you don't stop, there is the threat of you burning out. There is the threat of you suffering from such high anxiety, from fear, from being overwhelmed, from not being able to enjoy your family or having a full life. And so some of us are, these I used to be a control freak. And you need to know the system is always going to demand. And Stephanie started to learn about that. And so, think for a moment. There's always going to be another meeting. There's always going to be another escalation. There's always going to be another deadline, another email, more to-do lists, another person who wants your attention, another change that has not been fully thought through. There are always going to be mistakes, another problem that somebody believes is urgent. The system never wakes up one morning and says, hey, you've worked hard enough. Nothing more is required of you today. Why don't you take a break? Maybe you're lucky enough to have a manager that tells you, take a break, take a break. I can tell you the leaders that I coach with, they just keep reacting to the system because the system keeps demanding. And if you're waiting for the organization to become calmer before we allow ourselves to feel calm, you may be waiting for forever. And so I want to introduce you to this model. It's called the Mindful Act Leadership Model. It's got 3 tiers. And the 3 tiers are an acronym, and it stands for Achieve, Connect, and Thrive, the ACT, because you actually need to do something. It's really a simple model that I wrote about in my book, Mindfulness at Work. And this is a model that I use with all the leaders that I coach. And that's why many of you are actually listening in now live or to the recording, because in the coaching that I do not do training. And that's one of the reasons why I have these lives, so that the leaders or the managers, many managers that I coach with in 40 different countries, they have access to this model. Because this model is anything from being passive. It's very active, but it's a different kind of active. It's an active where you learn to be present. You learn to be present on 3 levels. One level is to yourself. The second level is to the people that you're meeting with, your one-on-ones, your one-to-many, your team. And the third level is your awareness of the system. And you know, pressure is never going to disappear. And this ACT model gives you insight into what is happening within the system and how you can stand somewhere else within the system. And so it's a simple structure for coming back to presence under pressure. The Achieve is all about you and yourself. How can I lead myself under pressure? The Connect, if you can see the slide, is the blue on the screen. It's your one-to-one and your one-to-many relationships. How can you strengthen capacity in others? Just strengthen capacity in your team. You know, it's not all about you. How can you build your team? You know, I talk about shared leadership. And the third piece, the green, is about thriving instead of surviving. It's how you can influence the wider system so that there's more sustainability. And so what we want to do is we want to have insight into all these 3 dimensions at once. And when I look at Stephanie's journey, I can see a very clear before and after in each of these 3 areas. And so let's have a look and see how she moved into the first area. So the first area is called Achieve. And the Achieve is about how she led herself. And so she went from being restless. Remember, I told you in the beginning, she was restless. She was 24/7. In the Achieve piece about leading herself, it's about her coming off automatic pilot and into intentional response. So noticing her fixing part, that was the after of it, okay? So before, she was busy. She introduced these small pauses and she noticed, oh, that's me, the expert coming in. It's me, the solver coming in. And of course, her ego loved it. Her ego loved her fixing things and solving things. But that way, she was not building her family, her team. She cares about them so much. It's almost like a wider family. So I see there's a question in the comments. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments, and there'll be time for Q&A in the end where I'll answer questions. So again, we're in the Achieve part of the Mindful Act Leadership Model. It's how you can pause, go off automatic pilot, go off automatic reaction and into intentional response. Because, you know, if you're coaching with me, you know that what I do with you is I work a lot on your intention, on your choice. How do you get out of being on that always on mode to pause enough to notice your thinking, to notice what you want to change in your behavior? Our thinking often makes us so pressurized. Our thinking is what makes us overwhelmed. Our thinking is what gives us the self-doubt some of the time that I can't do it. So let's see what else happened to Stephanie. You know, she moved from being pressurized and from being in reactive mode. This was a pattern that she was always in. She was pressurized, she was reactive, she was fixing, she was carrying it all into being tired. And what she did to gain her energy back is she started pausing before she responded, and then she could choose a different way of showing up. The next thing that happened, all part of the achieve of her noticing what's going on, is she actually got her autonomy back because she noticed, I do have a choice. And what choice do I have in the moment? Saying yes instead of automatically fixing something is already a huge leap forward. So the shift is not about caring to not caring. You're always going to care. It's about from reaction to response. It's from actually being reacting with pressure to responding and breathing. Breathing, and notice that it's always a choice what you do. So let's go into the connect part of the model. The connect part of the model is about leading relationships. It's not about fixing problems. It's about shared leadership. It's about how you're going to take your team with you. How do you take not only yourself to the next level? That's what I was speaking about with a leader who wants to move from being a senior director to a VP, which is what Stephanie did as well. It's actually how can you actually grow your team, not how can you only grow yourself, but the connect is about how you can connect in your one-on-ones and how you can grow your team. So before it was about how can she solve this, and after it was how can I help them think. And this is not easy. It's not easy to do this work, and that's why a lot of people actually know what they need to do. They need someone along with them for the ride. And that's where the coaching is so powerful, because what we do from week to week is, and even from moment to moment, is we move you from here, before, where you're a solver, to before, where you become a multiplier. For any of you that's read the book, Liz Wiseman's book, Multipliers, great, great book. It helps you be a multiplier. So before, automatically, Stephanie would step in and give the answer. Now she created all the space for letting her team actually think first. And somebody said to me, so when do I speak? If I'm letting my team speak all the time, when do I speak? So, I come from South Africa originally. And Nelson Mandela, he was known in his leadership for letting his people speak first, and then he came in and spoke after. So the next part of the connect and leading relationships is people used to be dependent on her. So everybody, Stephanie, I need this, Stephanie, I need that. And how did she move? She stayed connected while they carried the part. And this, my friends, is also very important, because to move from being the one that you carry it all to actually supporting somebody, you actually give it over to them to carry it, but you hold their hand along the way. And it's not a strong hand. It's like almost like you have their hand on their back. I've got you. And as a leader, as a manager, that's not your number one responsibility. Your number one responsibility is to back your team up. Okay, that's all you need to do. Back your team up. So it's not about I'll carry this with you. It is about I'll stay with you while you carry your part. So now we're moving into the third part of the model, the Thrive part. So I'm just going to show you the picture again. 1 second, so that you can see where we are. So here we are again. The Thrive part is the green. For those of you that can see, it holds the achieve and it holds the connect. And why it's important is because if you're not thriving, you're surviving. And so the Thrive holds, it actually carries the achieve, which is me, myself, leading under presence instead of pressure. So you do need to lead yourself under pressure, but you can do that with presence. It's not about being no pressure. It's not about being no judgment. It's not about not being, worried about things. it just drops a notch. And when that drops a notch, you can be that much more present. So we're now talking about Thrive. So let's go back there. So the Thrive is leading in the wider system. And so instead of carrying the system that, remember, the system is always demanding. It's going to be demanding, demanding, demanding. How you can actually influence the system. So before Stephanie was controlled, she was very controlled. She was always on, and she thought that was great. But again, that puts so much pressure on you. It puts pressure on your team. In one of the meetings, I just have to tell this story for a moment, and then we'll go back to the slide. In one of her meetings, she had such a revelation because she noticed that she was putting so much pressure. She put pressure on actually a senior manager, and he pushed back. And she noticed it. She got bad feedback. And in the coaching, we understood it together because she made him feel small because he couldn't deliver. And she was putting so much pressure on him because she felt she was carrying everything. She needed to do something. She needed to have a presentation for, a senior exec. She didn't have all the data. So she went to another senior exec that was, more senior to her. And she was pushing. She didn't know how to influence to get what she needed. And so her pushing and her demands made him feel less, made him feel that, he couldn't think from the pressure. And so she realized that putting this pressure on the system is not helping her, not helping the system. And so one of the things I do is that I work with people on how they choose what needs their attention and when they're going to put pressure on the system or not. And so one of the things we do is I have all these tools that I use. One of them I'm going to be giving you at the end of this live. So please listen to that till the end. I'm going to be giving you a link that you can download, a free resource called the Daily Leadership Reset. That's very, very helpful in helping you get from pressure to presence. And so Stephanie was very controlled. She moved to having more autonomy, more choosing. When I work with you, we do an audit. We see how you choose between all that. So the second thing is she waited for calm and she didn't allow herself calm. And so she named what belonged where. And so she moved into a different place. Before she absorbed every demand personally. Then she started to lead inside the complexity without observing it. So it's a very, very, very different change. So the system did not become more simple. She became more able to work with its complexity. And to be able to work with its complexity, you do need to start to feel comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. Change, any growth of anybody doesn't come with just naturally. It comes where you put a lot of effort into being present. You put a lot of effort into your choice. And we know today that leadership's not certainty. It is about you staying present and knowing that you don't have all the answers yet, but things are going to become clearer. And you are going to, see how you can influence the system. All the people that are so brilliant that are working together with you, how can everybody support everybody else so that you don't carry so much? So you do want to lead yourself. You want to stay connected to others. You want to work with the wider system. So there's a lot of things that you could be doing. So again, the before and after, this is important. Before, she felt that she had no choice. After, she thought, what choices do I have? Before, she was restless 24/7. After, she began pausing before reacting. Pausing. We learn this. We learn to pause, to breathe. On my YouTube channel, I also have a 3-minute mindfulness pause that you can download. You can do it in a break, 3 minutes to stop and pause. Before, she was reacting automatically. Afterwards, she started noticing this fixing part. Before, she was solving immediately. Afterwards, she was asking instead of solving. Before, she was carrying people and the system. Afterwards, she started noticing that she's influencing the system. And so she did not stop caring. She became a leader with more choice. So I want to ask you, what are you carrying today that you want to maybe let go of? Maybe you want to let go of it and, give your team some more room to grow. Give your team some more capacity and let go of some of this, what are you holding? So it's not about Stephanie becoming a different person. She didn't lose her drive. She did not lower her standards. She didn't stop caring. She became a leader with more choice. And that is why I call the model Mindful Act, because you do need to do something. Because leadership under pressure is about how we lead ourselves, how we lead our relationships, how we lead within the wider system. And so, what are you carrying today? Not because your role genuinely requires it, not because somewhere along the way you started believing that leadership meant holding everything together. So maybe you can notice your fixing part and ask yourself, how do I let go a little bit? Maybe this part is trying to protect me. And what can I do instead? So I want to invite you now to notice what's on the screen. I have a barcode here that you can scan, and this will give you access to all my future lives, because I'll send you a reminder before, if you sign up for this, all the future lives. And you'll have a link also to the lives that I've done in the past. You'll also receive a free gift of the Daily Leadership Reset. The Daily Leadership Reset is a resource, a free resource that you'll receive that helps you process your day. A lot of us go to sleep and we carry into our evening, into our sleep, all the problems of the day. And so how do you let go of it? You let go of it by noticing, by pausing, by noticing what the pressure is, by processing it and choosing what you want to do differently. So definitely do download this resource. And if you have any questions, I'm here. I'm here for you. And so I want to ask you, what part of Stephanie's story do you recognize in you? Where's your fixing part coming in? Where's your, maybe need to control things? Maybe it's hard for you to handle uncertainty. And what may not be yours to carry? So just before we finish, what I'd like to do is, I have a question here. Thank you for asking. So how do you help someone let go of control when part of them genuinely believes that if they do, something will fall apart? Yeah, so thank you for this question. As I said, our brains want to keep us safe all the time. But there is a part of us that genuinely knows as well, that things will not fall apart. That genuinely knows, hey, I actually need to change something. I mean, the leaders that come and coach with me are all managers. They all have teams, and they know that they need to start letting go. And so the first thing I would say is you need to have just maybe a 5% belief that things are not going to fall apart. And with that intention that you want to grow, that you want to bring more present moment awareness, that you want to let go of carrying so much, you bring that in and you find a resource. I have so many resources. I told you I have resource of the Daily Leadership Reset. Please download that. You can contact me. I'll answer any questions you have. You can meet with me and we can jump on a one-on-one and you can share. What are you carrying? What are you scared to let go of control? And so, first of all, just bring that intention that change is possible. Remember, it doesn't need to be comfortable. I always tell the leaders, the managers that coach with me, you need to be willing to move 15% out of your comfort zone, and I will support you. 15% out of your comfort zone. And so I want to just inspire you as you are walking away from this live today. Take a breath, thank yourself for listening and showing up today. And I thank you so much. And just want to wish you a wonderful continued day. And bye for now. I'm Samantha Amit, and I really thank you. Much gratitude for having you with me here today. Bye bye.